How we doing? I am your host, Robert T. Gardner Jr., also known as Dr. Rob. Welcome to Station BOB, and let me tell you a little about thee. I am a kid from a Harlem hood who turned out good. I got educated like I should. Now I know how to help you grow to become the best of your being in life, love, and work. With that said, I am here to provide you with some clarity associated with the perplexity of the challenges in your life, love, and work. So, without further ado, let's get down on it. Enjoy the show. Yes. Welcome once again, my friend, to Station BOB, where you listen to learn how to become the best of your being in life, love, and work. And of course, I am your host, Dr. Rob. What's going on? Well, as they say on the street, it's been a minute, but I'm back. Did you miss me? Yeah, I had to take care of some real serious personal business. You may be aware, I think I mentioned on my last podcast, that my father was either about to pass away or that he did pass away. But whatever that message was, the updated message is that my dearly beloved father, he was a complicated man, but he was my father, and he also had lots of good qualities. But he has passed away, and that took me away from the podcast for a minute. And so I'm back with what I believe with another interesting topic. And I saw something on Facebook the other day, and some individual was talking about what real men do. And so that, struck a nerve with me because, from what I understand about human behavior as a therapist and having researched the topic of, what makes us tick as human beings, and I stressed the idea regarding emotional intelligence and how important it is to be aware of your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, and so on and so forth. So at any rate, I wanted to address that topic, though. The topic of a real man. And so I came up with the idea, with the question as to what is a real man? And that is the topic for today. Like I said, what is a real man? Now, a man is a human being, right? Right. I think we would say okay to that, right? However, when you hear the term a real man, it almost seems to imply or sound to me that a man is somewhat extraterrestrial or something, to that effect. Or simply that there is something, something more than a man, about being a man. Like, in other words, there's the man and then there's a real man. And then, there's also a good man. But right now we're talking about a so-called real man. And so when you think about this, as I just said, there is a man and then there is a real man. And so that begs the question, what is a real man? Okay? What is a real man? Does he cry? Does he communicate his thoughts and feelings to his mate or friends or family? Does a real man admit when he is wrong? For a real man, does his woman have to shrink into submission so he can feel secure so that he can be big while his woman is small, as she, plummets into submission to serve his every need. Or, hopefully this is not the case, but, then there's the man that beats on his woman. And in many cases, in his mind and in the mind of others, that's a real man because he has his woman under control. And so with all that said, please tell me, what is a real man? You see, because these are some of the many components of which, lots of people, consider what qualifies a man to be a real man. A real man doesn't cry. A real man is tough. A real man doesn't show emotions. I mean, for real? So, like I said, a man don't cry, because that would be considered soft. Men are not supposed to cry. I mean, who made that up? Okay, like, who came up with that idea? Men are not supposed to cry. Or don't express your feelings or thoughts because men are not supposed to show any emotion. Men, real men, if you will, are to only show strength by not displaying, what the real strengths of not only a man, but of any human being who just so happens to be a man. Like a man, being strong, not crying, not showing any emotion. I mean, I'm not sure how that adds up to a real man. But as a sidebar, I read a while back that Joseph Kennedy Sr., the father of former President John F. Kennedy, he did not allow his children to cry during, any family tragic events. His children, he had I don't know how many children he had, but he had lots of children, boys and girls who at this time they're men and women. But his focus was on the men of the family because, he was about trying to get his sons into positions of power by running, for the office of president and so on and so forth. But I'll get into that down the line. So anyway, the story goes that Joseph Kennedy Jr., who was in the process, he was about to end his time in the military, but then his desire to want to be a war hero, because as I said, their father kind of Joseph Kennedy Sr. groomed his sons to be, to lead the United States, to run for the office of the President of the United States. And so Joseph Kennedy Jr., the oldest son, understanding that he was about to depart from his military service. However, he had not yet really attained any kind of heroic status. He was not a war hero. And so as the story goes, he was in the process, he was about to leave, but then, some special assignments came up. And his assignment involved carrying out a very dangerous war mission to drop bombs on Germany, I believe during World War II. And so in his endeavor to pursue becoming a war hero so that he could be, considered popular with the people and make a good run for the presidency of the United States as his father, Joseph Kennedy Sr., so desired. However, a funny thing happened on the way to Germany, regarding Joseph Kennedy Jr., because, see, he was carrying some large bombs on a plane that had no passengers. The plane was filled with explosives that he was supposed to drop over certain areas of Germany. However, during his mission or trip to, the targeted site, his plane exploded and he died. And he never completed the mission, or nor did he become, a war hero. And so after learning the news of the tragic death of his son, Joseph Kennedy Sr., he did not allow any of his children to cry or show any emotion related to the sudden and tragic death of their sibling. So now, how crazy is that? Crying, which is the most used and probably one of the most effective human functions to deal with death or tragedy or sadness. This family of men and some women were ordered or directed by their father, Joseph Kennedy Sr., not to cry in the face of the tragic sudden death of their oldest brother. Now, I mean, there are some things that just make you say, And by golly, I would have to say that's one of those things that make you say, And so getting back on topic, for centuries, the man has been mystified as this above normal human being, whereby he as the man is uplifted in a way that I have found to be so far from the truth that's part of what prompted me to talk about this truth as to what is a real man. Now, please don't get me wrong. I, too, am a man. Of course, you can tell I'm Dr. Rob. And so this is no bashing of men or anything of the like. What this is really like taking a real look at the idea of what is a real man? Because a real man is a human, okay? However, society, has, I guess just because that's the way the world is, male cultures dominate the world, okay? All of the customs or what could I say? The cultures, customs are all male dominated. That's a fact, okay? And so, but in America, we have this thing where we talk about, he's not a real man. A real man would do that. A real man would do this. A real man would handle his business. And so, as I said, this begs the question for me, what is a real man? And so, everything we discussed so far, like what I mentioned in the beginning about a man crying, does a man express his emotions and thoughts and so on and so forth? Those traits or real man characteristics does not allow a man to be a real man if a man is not a real man. And so, I'm going to get back to that in a few, but I wanted to switch gears and look at the counterpart of the man, which are the women. And so I just wanted to point out, do you ever hear of a woman being called a real woman? There is such a thing as a good woman, just like the term a good man. But the term a real woman, I've hardly ever heard somebody say, yeah, she's a real woman. So this real man kind of gives you, I think, just a kind of upper echelon status of a man, a real man. Okay. And so I wonder why, we never have heard that term or that, anybody use that phrase. She's a real woman. And so it seems that a woman can either be a good woman, which simply means she holds up and she holds down her man beyond the reach of even what the man can do for himself in so many cases. And that would be what we call a good woman. However, the standard is a little different for men because, as I said earlier, there is such a thing as a good man, which, he's honest, he's considered a provider, a protector, and perhaps even a good father. And then there is the man of man, which is a real man. And so again, I ask, what is a real man already? And so I'm finally going to answer that question on the other side of the break.
Have you read any good books lately? Your host, Robert T. Gardner Jr., also known as Dr. Rob, is the author of 3 great books. In his first book, The Choices We Make, Robert takes a look at relationships to help readers learn how to have a good relationship with themselves before they can have good relationships with others. In his second book, Access Denied, Robert brings an eye-opening perspective about what happens to children and fathers when their relationships with the mothers of their children end on bad terms. Robert explores what he calls child porn, when a parent, usually the mother, uses a child as a weapon to hurt the other parent. Robert provides a let-go lab in his book to help parents find positive ways to resolve their issues in the best interest of their children. Light Up Your Life is Robert's latest book. Robert writes about the fact that we are all born with a special God-given talent. Even though we are all born with a special talent, most of us miss our true calling. In this book, you will learn how to find your special talent and light up your life so that you can become the person you were born to be and live a more fulfilled, purpose-driven life. Books are available at barnesandnobles.com, amazon.com, and Robert's website, relationshipreadiness.org. Thank you, and back to the show.
All right. And so, before we stepped aside for the break, I raised that question again. What is a real man? And so now I'm going to dive into the different, perspectives of what a real man is. And so I'll start off by first society's standards. A real man is what, for the record, let me just say, I think there are 2 definitions of what a real man is. There's a street or colloquial version of what a real man is. And then there is the theoretical version, the book version, if you will, of what a real man is. Now, I just found this out as I did some research on this topic before, jumping on this podcast. And so, in theory, the book definition of a real man is a real man's power resides in his innate values, his sense of balance, intellect, his ability to hold his own in any situation, and his mature handling of relationships. A real man treats a woman as an equal and a partner rather than as an object. I have to admit, now, I've never heard of a real man being described this way, even though this would be my definition of what a real man is. And I have to admit, it sounds pretty much like the type of man and person that I am. But that's the theoretical definition and description of a real man. Okay. But this is not the type of real man that this podcast is about, because the type of real man that I'm talking about here is the real man that I hear all the time on television and movies, or, and communications with friends and family and so on and so forth. And so, as I said, this is not, the theoretical real man, that's not him. That's not who we talking about. The real man I'm talking about, and having such a hard time trying to understand how this type of man can be described and or considered to be a real man. That's what I'm talking about. That description of what I've been told what I've heard and what I've seen, a real man can be described as follows, with some variations one way or another, which, I had described earlier in the beginning of this podcast. And so a real man, as I know it, as I understand it to be, and I am miffed by how this is the standard of what a real man is, supposed to be. And so let me just, jump into it. A real man does not cry. That would be considered unmanly in the highest degree. A real man does not communicate his thoughts or feelings or emotions because he is a man and he is not supposed to show emotions. And a real man does not communicate about his thoughts or his feelings because he does not have to, because he is the man. And his woman and his woman, as I said, and his male peers have no expectations for him to do either of these natural human behaviors in regard, to a man expressing his thoughts and feelings. And so I continue. A real man does not have to admit when he is wrong because he does not have to answer to anyone in the household, because his submissive woman is certainly not going to demand or expect for her dominant male real man mate to succumb to admitting that he was wrong. Like what? Now, this is one of my favorite. Not that I like it, but that it's so contrary to a man being a real man. It makes me cringe when a man has an expectation, in many cases, to demand that his woman be submissive to him. So he, the man, all right, the real man wants a submissive. I'm not saying all real men want a submissive woman, but this fits the description of what I'm talking about in regard to the real man. A real man, would want his woman to be submissive to him so he, the man, can be bigger in the relationship and feel secure. Now, what about that? I mean, god damn. If you ask me, this screams of a man not being a real man when his woman has to shrink into submission so he, the man, can rise into the so-called dominant role. Think about that. A real man becomes even more of a man when his woman disappears in the relationship by reducing herself to submission, to being a servant pretty much, to please some man that is probably not very difficult. You feel me? Now, I know this might sound harsh, and it does. See, but sometimes when you talk about the truth, when you talk about reality, it sounds harsh because we don't hear it that much. Because, see, I'm a man. But what I'm really talking about is it makes no sense for a person to be considered a real man because he does not cry. Crying is one of the best sources of healing for any man, any woman, any little boy, any little girl, any human being crying. You ever had a good cry before? Oh my God. After you have a good cry, it usually ends in a good laugh. I mean, that's what happens. You cry so much and you look at yourself as a man or whatever and you're like, oh damn, like, woo. What happened to me? And so that's good stuff, because after you cry, you can laugh. And so, please, don't talk about a real man should not cry. Crying is one of the best sources of healing for, sadness, anger, unhappiness, disappointment. Damn it. Give in a good cry. So let me just keep going. So for a man to be a real man, a woman must reduce herself to childlike tendencies to not question anything her man says or what he does, because she is submissive and an effort to what I say to make an unhappy man happy. And I say this because only a half a man would want his woman to be a half of a woman by being submissive. I mean, think about that. Your mate, your partner, your grown woman, your wife has to diminish herself into submission. With her master's degree, she has to take her master's degree in business administration into submission with her. Well, where she's a director of operations at a major organization, and at home, she has to diminish herself to her half man who only feels good and big enough if his woman, if submissive. Stop it. Stop it. Please tell me how this adds up to a real man. And yet, there is still more. There is another crazy component of being a real man. Now, here I am. I'm not talking about, for this next component, I'm not talking about a so-called abusive man per se, even though I should be, but that's not what I'm doing with this next one. I'm talking about that man who has signaled in a subliminal way to his submissive woman that he may one day resort to some type of physical assertiveness by displaying that type of aggressive behavior, which, just so happens to further keep his already, submissive wife in check. And so with that said, please tell me how all of this adds up to what we consider and proudly proclaim to be a real man. So if I could say, as the podcaster and the host of this podcast, and using logic and most of all, good common sense, a person considered to be a real man could not possibly be real at anything by never showing any real emotion, by not shedding any tears, by not expressing one's thoughts and feelings to resolve issues in conflict, just for, just in the process of having mere communication with your significant other. Not to mention that one's mate has to reduce herself to a mere bag of shells and join the ranks with the children because she should dare not demonstrate any type of idea or ideas that may call into question the foolish decision-making of a real man. And to that, I say to my woman, I'm just talking about me right now. I have said, and I will always say to my woman, if your idea is better than my idea, then we are going with the best idea so that we can get to where we're going or accomplish what we are trying to achieve. You feel me? I mean, all of the things that are natural and beneficial for all human beings, being both men and women, to exist as individuals, are suppressed for the mere purpose of showing some type of toughness that seems to me to be totally unnecessary because of all of the things that it takes to be an emotionally healthy person. All of the good things about being emotionally healthy are not allowed when it comes to being a real man. Instead, you would be considered soft, not a real man. Oh my God. Oh my God. That, my friend, is a prescription for early death, depression, a stroke, because you would have so much stuff pinned up inside because you never really allowed your feelings to exist by crying or expressing oneself and or just being totally unhappy, as men, because after a while a real man could not be happy living under, that false bravado to promote his false sense of self as a real man. Are you hearing me? And then the pressure of carrying the full weight of the marriage may eventually crush him, since his woman is not allowed to think and or fully participate in the relationship, because in her submissive role, what could she say or think to do? Because the real man is handling everything. Like what? Like, whoa. So, in closing, I'm just going to, share some pointers with you, and I hope that you're able to, embrace some of my suggestions. And I will discuss that on the other side of the break.
Relationship Readiness Life and Work Preparedness Services, the place you come to for coaching, consulting, and counseling in life, love, and work. We are a multi-purpose service organization that will coach you up, educate, guide, and motivate you to succeed. We provide management training and consulting services for all businesses in the areas of employee relations, unionized employees, progressive discipline, the annual review process, and emotional intelligence to develop effective leaders for your organization. And our relationship counseling services for individuals, couples, groups show you how to become relationship ready with improved self-esteem, resilience, and self-awareness. To learn more about our programs and services, please contact Robert T. Gardner Jr. by email at changeagentrtg@gmail.com or request a meeting for a free 1-hour consultation at relationshipreadiness.org. Thank you, and let's go back to Station BOB.
All right, welcome back. So in closing, as I said before I stepped aside to let the promo in, I just wanted to share some advice or suggestions, that, have to do with, understanding what it takes to be a real man, To be a real man, is to be a human. You must cry to release those deep emotions that compel you to cry. That is a natural and normal human function. A real man should not, be shamed. A real man should not be afraid to cry. That's what being a man is all about. Not having the fear at the most vulnerable times in your life. And crying is probably, one of the highest ranking levels of vulnerability, especially as a man. So crying is a natural and normal human function. And, as a man, as a real man, you must show some humility, because no man knows it all, and no man should not have to carry the full load just simply because he is a man. And his woman is educated, or even if she's not, but she has some type of life experience that could be instrumental to the overall success and happiness of the marriage. Not to mention that she may have the same or even better earning potential as her real man. Not to mention, her level of intelligence. Oh my God, if I should mention that. So if you are a real man, then you have to let your woman be a real woman. and let her contribute to the relationship as a partner, not as a child, and not as a person who should know her place in the relationship and live her life as a very unhappy person due to your unhappiness, being a half a man who requires his woman to be invisible in their relationship. I mean, think about that, will you please? So if you want to be a real man, then just be a real man and do all the natural good natured things that you were born to do, instead of incarcerating yourself within the mythical societal standards that have, these societal standards and social constructs that have been designed for you as a man. With that said, I'm going to stop right there. And I just want to mention, and I'm not trying to defend myself or my topic, I just want you to know that this is not intended to be negative. This is not a male bashing. I'm just feeling passion for the topic because this idea of what a real man is so prevalent. It's all over the place, and it is totally, unequivocally wrong. A real man being hard, tough, not crying doesn't make you a real man. That can make you a real fool, and a real unhealthy fool. So as I said, this is not male bashing. This is male truth. If you a man, you should be able to handle this if you a real man. You feel me? And I mean that. So as I was saying, if you want to be a real man, then just be a real man. And do all the natural good natured things that you were born to do, instead of incarcerating yourself in the mythical social constructs that have been designed for you as a man. And, and as I said, really this time I'm going to stop right here. And I hope that I opened up some new perspectives and hopefully freed both men and women from this false idea, this false bravado that brings nothing but the worst or unhappiness for any real man in the end. Trust me, whenever you suppress your natural human, feelings, emotions, and tears, or your natural human tendencies, crying, communicating, showing your emotions, and so on, all of that contributes to an unhappy and incomplete person. Stop it, please, and start to live as a man, a human, in order to be a real man. Especially, you do not have to be a real man if you are already a man. Give me a break, okay? Thank you so much for tuning in, my friend. I know it's been a minute, but life was happening for me. I had to, send my father off with his homegoing, and that is a monumental task and multiple responsibilities, not to mention my own emotions and the ups and downs of that. But hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully it helped you in the way that you couldn't find answers or understanding before. And with that said, remember, life is always good, even when it ain't. And love is an action, not a word, and it is not supposed to hurt. Until the next time we meet, peace. As we wrap up this show, I hope this topic helped you to grow. And now you know a little bit more. than you knew before. If you have any questions about this topic, please email me at changeagentrtg@gmail.com. See my website, relationshipreadiness.org, to learn more about my counseling, consulting, and educational programs related to life, love, and work. Finally, in the words of the late, great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., if I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody he is traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. Until we meet again, do the right thing when nobody is looking. Peace, beloved.